Especially when things get complex, or we're facing a lot of uncertainty, we tend to think about that solo aha moment, right? But what if the real transformative wisdom, the kind that unlocks really powerful solutions, doesn't come from just one person, but from a collective journey? So today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that, the concept of consultation. And we're pulling from a really fascinating set of writings and guidance from the Baha'i faith, which places, well, a huge emphasis on this process. Our sources include insights from Bahá'u'lláh, the founder of the faith, Abdu'l-Bahá, his son and successor, Shoghi Effendi, the guardian, and the Universal House of Justice, which is the faith's elected governing body today.
Yeah, and our mission here really is to unpack what consultation actually means in this specific context, why it's seen as so incredibly vital, and maybe most importantly, the practical principles, even the spiritual ones, that guide it. The hope is to give you a kind of framework for seeking clarity, building unity and making strong decisions really in any group you might find yourself in.
Okay, so to really get this, we probably need to start with Baha'u'llah's own words, the foundational stuff. He uses some really powerful images. He calls consultation a lamp of guidance, which leadeth the way, and also the bestower of understanding. I mean, what does that tell us? It sounds like much more than just, a meeting technique.
Oh, absolutely. It's presented as almost a source of divine light, you could say. Baha'u'lláh states pretty clearly that no power can exist except through unity. And critically, no welfare and no well-being can be attained except through consultation. So you see, it's not just about solving problem X or Y. It's about individuals reaching their, quote, true station and achieving well-being for society as a whole. Consultation and unity are completely intertwined. Unity is the basis for any power, any progress. So it suggests this collective wisdom isn't just efficient, it's, well, spiritually necessary.
And the benefits he talks about are just, well, profound. Consultation bestoweth greater awareness, he says, and transmuteth conjecture into certitude, which basically means turning our best guesses into something we can be truly sure about. I mean, imagine the power in that. He calls it a shining light, which, in a dark world, leadeth the way and guideth. Nothing less than the maturity of the gift of understanding.
Exactly. It implies a kind of transformation of how we even think. And Baha'u'lláh doesn't just, suggest this. He gives a very strong directive. He stresses, in all things it is necessary to consult. And he adds, this matter should be forcibly stressed by thee, so that consultation may be observed by all. It's really not presented as optional. It's meant to be a universal way of operating.
Okay, so if consultation is done with that level of attention and force, what's the ultimate outcome supposed to be?
Well, the outcome, when it's done properly, is described in pretty remarkable terms. Quote, whatever emergeth from the consultation of those chosen, that indeed is the command of God. Now, that implies a kind of spiritual validation for the collective decision. It lifts it way beyond just human agreement. It's this belief that through this rigorous, principled process, divine guidance can actually be revealed in what the group decides to do.
Wow. That's a really profound vision from Baha'u'lláh. But okay, how do we actually do that? How do we apply these big ideas? And this seems to be where Abdu'l-Bahā's writings come in, getting into the nitty-gritty, right? He talks about seeking counsel from a spiritual assembly, that's the local elected Baha'i council, and obeying its decision. Why is that obedience part so critical?
Well, it's seen as crucial for ensuring things are properly ordered and well-arranged, and specifically to avoid individual judgments that could, quote, do harm to the cause. So it's a very clear instruction to prioritize the group's well-being, the community's progress, over just what one person might think is best. It's about building a functioning, harmonious system.
And he also lays out these prime requisites for the people consulting. And they're not just skills, are they? They're deep qualities. Things like purity of motive, radiance of spirit, detachment from all else save God. He even mentions attraction to his divine fragrances and servitude to his exalted threshold. That points to a really deep spiritual orientation, doesn't it? A kind of humility.
It does. And one really striking part of Abdu'l-Bahā's guidance is how the discussion itself should work. The instruction is clear. Every member expresseth with absolute freedom his own opinion and setteth forth his argument. Absolute freedom. But then here's the key part. If someone opposes your view, he must on no account feel hurt. Why? Because not until matters are fully discussed can the right way be revealed. So it's not about being polite and avoiding disagreement. It's meant to be a vigorous, open exchange, sometimes challenging, which leads to that really powerful image. The shining spark of truth cometh forth only after the clash of differing opinions. It's not about avoiding the clash, it's about using it to find truth.
That sounds, well, potentially intense. How do you make sure that clash doesn't just become, arguments and people getting defensive? Where's the line?
Yeah, that's exactly why those prime requisites are so vital. The whole foundation has to be that purity of motive, that detachment. It can't be about winning the argument for yourself. It has to be about genuinely trying to discover the truth together, contributing, not dominating.
Okay, so after all that free expression, maybe some clashing, how do they actually make a decision?
Well, if everyone agrees unanimously, then well and good, simple enough. But if there are differences, then a majority of voices must prevail. And the instruction is very direct. All must obey and submit to the majority. This is about ensuring the group can move forward, unified in action, avoiding getting stuck.
Okay, now this next point, this is the one that really made me pause. It's a staggering idea, I think, especially today when we often praise standing by your convictions. The idea that it's better to be wrong together than right alone. Abdu'l-Bahá says, if they agree upon a subject, even though it be wrong, it is better than to disagree and be in the right, for this difference will produce the demolition of the divine foundation. I mean, how does that work practically? How does a wrong but united decision supposedly lead to truth eventually? Doesn't that risk groupthink? What kind of trust does that require?
It's a huge paradox, isn't it? The reasoning given is essentially this. If they agree and both parties are in the wrong, as it is in unity, the truth will be revealed and the wrong made right and erode. The core belief is that unity is so fundamentally important, so paramount, that even an initially flawed decision, if everyone unites behind it, will somehow over time lead to the truth being revealed, whereas disunity, even if one side is technically right, is seen as destructive because it shatters that essential foundation of cooperation. It requires immense trust, yes. Trust in the process itself and trust that unified effort, even if it starts off track, will ultimately attract guidance and correction. That's why single votes causing division are seen as so harmful. They break that foundational unity needed for truth to emerge.
Wow, that's a radical level of prioritizing unity, truly radical. And Abdu'l-Bahá doesn't limit this just to assemblies or major issues, does he? He seems to broaden its scope quite a bit. It applies to personal things, like when a believer is uncertain about his affairs or planning a project or business, also larger issues, village affairs, even professional groups like in industry or commerce. He basically says consultation is desirable and acceptable in all things and on all issues. It's meant to be everywhere.
Exactly. And he also highlights the personal benefits for the individual engaging in this. Consultation, he says, giveth him insight into things and enableth him to delve into questions which are unknown. You become more perceptive, basically. The light of truth shineth from the faces of those who engage in consultation. It causes living waters to flow and ancient glory to shine.
Yeah. So it's framed as a path to personal spiritual growth and enlightenment, not just a way to solve practical problems. Right. And given all this focus on spirited discussion, even clashing opinions, there's also very practical advice on preventing it from going too far, becoming actual discord. Abdu'l-Bahá advises, when you notice that a stage has been reached when enmity and threats are about to occur, you should immediately postpone discussion of the subject. That seems like such crucial, almost tactical advice. How often do discussions just derail because nobody hits the pause button at that critical moment?
It's about situational awareness, isn't it? Knowing when to step back, recenter, protect that spirit of unity that underpins the whole thing. And to show what true consultation looks like, he gives this powerful example, the disciples of Jesus after his ascension. They gathered, consulted on how to remain faithful. They discussed detachment, serving God without worldly ties, accepting hardships, even persecution, joyfully. And the key point emphasized is that there were no dissenting voices, all agreed. They achieved unity through that collective discussion and self-sacrifice without any quibbling or opposition. That's held up as the ideal.
Okay, so if Bahá'u'lláh gave the spiritual blueprint and Abdu'l-Bahá provided the practical tools, then Shoghi Effendi seems to really focus on how consultation becomes the actual bedrock of this global administrative system. He says the keynote of the cause of God is not dictatorial authority, but humble fellowship, not arbitrary power, but the spirit of frank and loving consultation. That's a total flipper how we usually think about power structures, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And one really fascinating thing is how Shoghi Effendi sees consultation as the way to reconcile principles that often seem opposed. He talks about balancing mercy and justice, or freedom and submission, even the sanctity of the right of the individual and of self-surrender. Consultation is presented as this dynamic process that holds these apparent tensions together in a creative balance instead of forcing an either or choice.
Balancing freedom and submission or individual right and self-surrender. That does sound almost paradoxical. Is there a risk there? Like, could the push for unity accidentally stifle genuine individual concerns?
Well, that's where, again, the purity of motive and that absolute freedom of expression during the discussion come in. The process is designed to safeguard against suppression. The freedom to say anything, no matter how different, is vital before the decision. The submission, the unity, comes after the decision is made, so the group can act together. It's really a two-step thing, completely open input, then completely unified output.
Right. And this seems to connect directly to the role of elected representatives in the Baha'i community. Their job is explicitly not to dictate, but to consult. And not just amongst themselves, but crucially, as much as possible with the friends whom they represent. They're told to take the friends into their confidence, acquaint them with their plans, share with them their problems and anxieties, and seek their advice and counsel. It's all about shared governance, transparency, built on that consultative trust.
Exactly, and this reinforces the idea that the majority decision, once reached, is seen as the voice of truth, never to be challenged, and always to be wholeheartedly enforced. But what's really encouraging, I think, is the idea that even the most lowly, untutored, and inexperienced among the friends can, through selfless and ardent devotion, contribute something distinct and valuable to the consultation. It really underlines that every voice matters, regardless of status or background.
It's so clear this isn't just a helpful suggestion, it's fundamental. Shoghi Effendi states it unequivocally. Consultation, frank and unfettered, is the bedrock of this unique order.
That's pretty definitive.
It is. And again, he reiterates that differences of opinion during consultation are actually valuable. Through the clash of personal opinions, the spark of truth is often ignited and divine guidance revealed. He cautions, patience and restraint are essential. And importantly, no fruitless and hair-splitting discussions should happen. It's about productive, truth-focused dialogue, not just arguing for the sake of it. And linked to that, there's this crucial need to learn to forget personalities and to overcome the desire to take sides and fight about it when you're in consultation. Why is that so important, do you think? And maybe, why is it so hard for us to actually do?
Oh, it's hard because we're human, right? We get attached to our ideas, our egos get involved, but the process demands detachment. Detachment from your own brilliant idea, detachment from your personal feelings about whoever proposed the other idea, detachment from personalities altogether. The focus has to stay purely on the principle at hand, on finding the truth, on what's best for everyone involved. It's a huge mental shift from me winning to us discovering.
Okay, finally, bringing it up to the present-day guidance from the Universal House of Justice. They emphasize that the spirit of Baha'i consultation is very different from that current in the decision-making processes of non-Baha'i bodies. So what really makes it distinct from, say, how a parliament works or a typical corporate board meeting?
Well, the ideal, always, is striving for unanimity if possible. But if it's not, then voting happens, and they reiterate the process. After dispassionate, anxious, and cordial consultation, turn to God in prayer, and with earnestness and conviction and courage, record their vote and abide by the voice of the majority. You see the difference there. The prayer, the spiritual orientation, the conscious effort towards detachment and unity. It's not just about getting the most votes.
Right. And that crucial point about what happens after the vote. As soon as the decision is reached, it becomes the decision of the whole assembly, not merely of those members who happen to be among the majority.
Yeah.
Once it's decided, it's everyone's decision to support and implement no matter how you personally voted.
Yeah, and tied to that, there's no abstaining allowed in Baha'i voting. The guidance says a member who does not vote in favor of a proposition is, in effect, voting against it. It demands active participation, taking a stand. And one other clarification they make is important. Consultation is aimed at arriving at a solution to a problem. It's quite different from the sort of group bearing of the soul that is popular in some circles these days, which might border on confession, something forbidden in the Baha'i faith. So it's a structured, focused, problem-solving approach, not group therapy or airing personal issues.
Wow, okay. We've really covered a lot of ground in this deep dive on consultation. We've seen its purpose described as this divine lamp, a guide. We've talked about the personal, spiritual qualities needed, the whole dynamic process, free expression, clashing opinions, but seeking unity. And then accepting that majority decision as the way forward and how it's meant to apply to, well, pretty much everything.
Yeah, and maybe a challenge for you listening is to think about how these principles might actually transform your own group situations, whether that's in your family or a community group you're part of, maybe even your team at work. Imagine really trying to practice that detachment from your own opinion, focusing purely on finding the truth together and committing fully to unity once a decision is made. What would change?
Yeah, what could be possible if, in our own lives, our own groups, we consistently put that unity ahead of being individually right or winning the argument? Trusting, as these writings suggest, that even if an agreement starts out flawed, the truth will be revealed and the wrong made right through that united effort. It's definitely a powerful thought to sit with.